Good evening, everyone. My name is Hermenegildo Santiago, and welcome to our series of webinars that we've been having lately, University Consultants of America. This week's webinar is entitled Planning for a College Application. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth on the planning process for the college applications. My name, as I indicated, was Hermenegildo, is Hermenegildo Santiago. And just a little bit about me before we kind of get into the topic of college applications. I'm a VP of Client Relations at University Consultants of America. I attended Yale, Harvard, and also got a business certificate at UC Berkeley School of Business there, the Haas School. So I have experience attending highly selective schools as well as applying to highly selective schools. And I know very intimately sort of the process of applying to those schools. I have most of my background is in education, so I understand the education pipeline from sort of early on in the process, as well as secondary and post-secondary. So now at University Consultants of America, obviously I'm focusing much more on the higher ed sector and college and university admissions. So just to go into the topic at hand, a little bit of a topic overview today. We're going to be planning for the college applications. We really want to underscore the importance of planning, looking at the different pieces of that application process and also the timelines that you should have in mind while doing that planning process, and then some big picture strategies that we should all have in consideration given the topic at hand. So planning, we know that planning is important, but it is actually critical. We know that many students may have in mind a lot of different schools that they're going to be applying to. In this process, you really want to be able to be proactive as opposed to reactive. We know that students, especially very driven students, are involved in many activities, a lot of sports, as well as highly demanding coursework such as IB or AP, taking several AP exams. So you want to be able to be proactive in this area and not wait till there's a certain deadline in order to react on it. This will help you to stay on track, stay on time, and the more you plan, the less stressed out you will be, and you'll be able to maintain more of a positive outlook, have more of a grasp of what you're doing, and feel great and feel more empowered during the process. So the first step in any process is sort of your college list, right? What are the schools that you're thinking about? Why are you thinking about those schools? How did they come in mind? What is that formulation of that list of schools that you want to apply to? At the end of the day, we have to keep our goal in mind. Our goal is really to have great options when you make a decision. So you want as many options as possible. Let the colleges make their decisions, but then at the end of the day, you want to have at least some viable options so that you can make a decision that's based on your needs and where you will be happy and fit in at. So for your school list, you really want to do your research. We'll tell you about the ways not to do this process, but you want to be able to understand the curriculum, how the curriculum is developed, what they offer, as well as sort of the environmental factors that are involved, social environment, as well as, where is the campus? What does the campus look like? How am I going to feel on that campus? So those are some things to have in consideration in formulating that list. The surefire way to fail is to not research your colleges very well. Rankings can be sort of a baseline of, thinking about some colleges. However, you don't want to get mired in rankings because they can be misleading at times. Schools that may not rank very well in one area could rank better in other areas. One example, University of Washington is a great school. It's in Seattle. It is ranked 62 nationally. It's a great school, but ranked 62 nationally. And then on the U.S. News and World Report's global report, as opposed to the national report, they're ranked number 10. So there's a little bit of a difference there, and it has to do with what they include in that ranking. So you want to keep that in mind. Take it for what it is. Rankings can give you an indication of where schools fall in, but we don't want to be mired in that ranking sort of schema, because there are a lot of schools that exist in the US and are of high quality, and can provide many great experiences. So reputation is another. Some schools, some people may be, some schools have great reputations. Princeton, Harvard, Yale, they all come in mind, right? However, reputation is just another indicator. It could indicate good things, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be happy there. Just because Harvard is #1 doesn't mean that everyone should go to Harvard, and nor will everyone be happy at Harvard or find their fit at Harvard, right? So we don't want to get sort of distracted by reputation or rankings. Another one is word of mouth. Maybe your cousin went to the University of Chicago, they had a great time there. However, does that mean that you should go to the University of Chicago? Most likely not, right? You're not your cousin, you don't have the same values or the same temperament or personality or academic background as your cousin. You may not be as happy as your cousin is currently there. So word of mouth can kind of promote awareness, but it shouldn't be that factor that makes you want to go to a specific place. Do your research, be grounded in the research and the numbers and understanding what those places offer so that you make a good concerted decision. At the end of the day, we want to kind of create a list that has reach schools, target schools, and safety schools. Safety schools would be those schools that absolutely most people would probably get into. They're of good quality, but they may accept many people, right? Target schools are schools that fit sort of your testing range, your extracurricular range. A lot of the qualities and characteristics you have probably align with those schools, so those are target. Reach schools are all the schools, probably the top 20, right? They're a reach for everyone. It's not just because you have a 1500 you will go to Princeton University. A lot of people get rejected by top schools that have perfect SAT scores, perfect ACT scores, perfect subject tests, perfect AP scores. People do get rejected from these schools, although they do have those qualities or those indicators, so to speak, right? So we want to be able to have a blend of schools, because then at the end of the day, you will have sort of a blend to choose from. And just to keep some higher perspective, as you start learning about different schools, as you gain a higher sense of awareness, you're going to change your list. Your list is going to change. Maybe you originally loved UC Berkeley, but then realized that you like a smaller school system and that UC Berkeley is about 30,000 students. So you may want to apply to Pomona instead, although you are in California, right? Or to other smaller liberal arts colleges. And that's just one example. So that list will change as you gain more knowledge and awareness about certain subjects. So jumping in sort of the college applications and the type of college applications that do exist, there is the common application, the coalition applications. Those are the applications that are kind of all-encompassing that most schools may opt into. The most common is the common application, not to use that word over or in a trite way, common. So the common application, many schools opt into that, and you can use that as a way of applying to several schools in the United States. There's also, we want to make you aware of the University of California system. They do have their own application because there are various, University of California is a large school system, so they want to make sure that they, tailor those, that application to their university system and how large and expansive it is, right? So again, all schools have their specific applications, and you can apply to Yale through the Common App, or you can apply to Yale through their specific app. So you have to make that determination for yourself. That's just an example. Okay, so what are the aspects of different college applications? In most college applications, you're going to see all of these little bullet point markers, right? They're going to ask you about your parents. They're going to ask you about you, your biographical information, background information. They're going to ask you about your grades, awards, SAT, ACT scores, your extracurricular activities, your personal statement, essay, obviously. And then they're going to ask for a school report, right? This sort of section in black is mostly probably all major universities, colleges would ask for those things. For more selective or highly selective colleges and universities, they'll ask for additional things, and most likely those are the things in red, such as subject test scores, right? Individual additional test scores, which are from the SAT subject tests. And then they'll also ask you for supplemental essays, which is in addition to the personal statement essay, right? Or the personal essay. And then also recommendations from teachers. And then there are also schools that ask for interviews. They want to know you a little bit more deeply, so they ask you for an interview, and that's another data point that they utilize. So keep this in mind. Many of these apply to most schools, and the most selective schools often ask for what is also in red. So to jump to a little bit more deeply on the common application, the common application will allow you to apply to 20 schools. We don't advise you to apply to 20 schools because 20 schools is a lot of schools. Each school is basically a project. So just be aware that you can apply up to 20 schools. There are many schools that you can put on the common application. In the common application, you will have a section that is My School Supplements. And within that My School section, you indicate what college or university you're going to be applying to, and then that will kind of populate what that college have, the additional requirements that a college has, or their additional essays, any additional areas that they want to cover for their college. Jumping into the personal statement. The personal statement should not be a resume. So it shouldn't say, I was the president of XYZ, and during my presidency, I accomplished XYZ, and I was able to do XYZ in terms of volunteering. It is not your resume. It is not your list of accomplishments. Essentially, at the most baseline level, it's really answering the question, who are you? So you really want to understand who you are so that you can articulate that clearly in your personal statement. And that's what we do at University Consultants of America. We really help students to get to the crux of who they are and how they can articulate that so that they make the best argument for themselves in the personal statement, right? They have a compelling story. Supplemental essays. This is where culture comes into play, right? Different schools look for different kind of attributes for their student body. Rice, for example, is very community oriented. And so they're looking for students who show leadership, have done things cooperatively. Their questions in terms of their supplemental essays are going to be more rounded or grounded in sort of this sense of community. Whereas if you apply to MIT, they might ask you things about your background and how you've demonstrated leadership, for example, or maybe more quirky things given it's MIT. So what we want to get to here is that culture matters. Schools are looking for culture. They're looking for students with certain attributes. If they ask you for a time that you demonstrated leadership, then they're looking for leaders. If they're asking for a time that you were creative and outside of the box, then they're looking for students who have those qualities and can articulate those qualities in their essays. Usually the main question in the supplemental essays are sort of why this school? So your why for, or your reason for going to a school is going to be different from school to school. You cannot write the same why essay for Berkeley as you do for Amherst College as you do for the University of Florida. They're going to be different schools, different school experiences, and you should have different reasons for wanting to go to those schools, given what those opportunities are at those schools. So know your why, know who you are, know your why, so that you can make the best of this opportunity of writing these supplemental essays. So the timeline for working on essays, right? Your personal statement is going to take a little bit of chunk of time. So the summer after your grade 11 junior year, you should be working on that. You should have that done like by the end of the that summer of that junior year, because you're going to have to write other essays. So you should be working with it during that period of time, during that summer to September. And then the supplemental essays usually come out, since they do rewrite those many times. do come out when the common application and the new applications come out in late August, most likely. So you have from September to November to write those supplemental essays, address those prompts, and really dedicate time and effort to writing solid essays, as they are another indicator and they are important. Many students sort of gloss over this next section of teacher and counselor recommendations. They might ask any teacher for a recommendation. We do not advise that that be done. You should probably, if you're thinking of being a science major, you should be more strategic, or any major that you have, you should be strategic about what teachers you ask. So if you're saying that you're an arts and theater person, then you should probably have a theater teacher or a language arts teacher, English teacher write you a recommendation. If you're saying that you are physics and you fanatically love physics, then you should probably get your physics or math teacher to write you a recommendation. So you would want somebody that is in your area of study, since that's going to be part of your story. They want an informed story, right? Your teacher should also know you well. So don't choose teachers that don't know you well. You may have done well in a calculus course, but if your calculus teacher doesn't know you from any other student, then that's going to be a missed opportunity for you, right? If you do like a teacher, they know you sort of, and you did well in their class, then you want to meet and you want that teacher to write you a recommendation, then we suggest that you probably, talk to that teacher, remind them of what you did, who you are, so that that recommendation can mean something and will work in your favor. So just make sure that you contact all your recommenders by the end of your junior year, your 11th grade year, sort of as a timeline, right? And be strategic about the teachers that you choose. Many students stress out about this next section, which is the SAT, ACT, right? This is probably the angst of junior year, most likely, and subject tests as well. So many students, first of all, agonize about which test to take, ACT, SAT, should I take both? Maybe I should take both. I'll just see how I do. However, we do not suggest that you take both the SAT and the ACT. They look different, they feel different. Your preparation is going to be different for both tests. The timing is different on the test. So we want you to focus just on one. If you feel that SAT is best for you, then choose that one, focus on that one, and do the best that you can. If it's the ACT, the same strategy applies. Do the best that you can, focus on one test, and do as best as you can on that test. Do not send your scores for the ACT or the SAT until you see the scores. When you see the scores, verify the scores, and you know that you like the scores, then you send those scores. To never use your ACT or your SAT as a diagnostic, right? The diagnostic is basically sort of, how do I know that I'm doing well on this exam? How do I know that I'm going to have a good outcome? Never go to the SAT saying, I'm just going to see how I do on this exam. That is not a good strategy. If you want to take a diagnostic, take the diagnostic that is online or maybe given at your school to see where you fall baseline. Look at whatever you did wrong, or where your weaknesses are. Work on those weaknesses. Do the best that you can. Take a couple of practice tests, and then then that's when you take the test. And of course, when you get your test results or happy with the test result, just make sure that those test results are forwarded to the colleges and universities that you are applying to. Another data point are your grades. So high school transcripts are important. You're going to have to populate those onto the, your application, if it's common application or the school's specific application. Just make sure that by the end of the grade 11 junior year, you have a copy of your transcript, that transcript is pretty, that you have a copy of your transcript, and that you are able to verify those, put down the correct letter grades for all of those courses, since it's going to be sort of on an honor system until the school receives your official transcript. So when you do apply to the school, you've sent your application off, make sure that you contact your counselor, you let them know which schools you applied to, and then they can send the transcript out so that they can verify that transcript. There's a lot of terms that go with the admissions process that aren't always clear, that kind of can obfuscate, sort of, what's going on? I can't demystify this whole process. So rolling admissions is one term, right? And this just means that there's a wider window of opportunity for schools to accept applications. It may be September to all the way to March or June. There might be a wider window. It just means that you're able to do it during that period of time. So regular admissions is the term that we're all used to. And the regular admissions is basically there's a normal deadline, you follow that deadline to be considered, right? And then early admissions generally is October 15th to November 1st, and you would get a decision by December 15th for your school. Going a little bit deeply or more deeply into early admissions, there is early action and there's early decision. One is binding, one is not binding. Understand the difference. It's very important that you know that early action is not binding. So you're not bound to that school. If you get in, you can pursue other schools. For example, you apply early action to the University of Virginia. If you do get in, you can apply to other schools freely. However, if you apply early decision, which is binding, and you apply to Duke, then you better know that you want to go to Duke, because if you get into Duke, you get accepted to Duke, then you will have to go to Duke. The only case where this is negated is if you're denied admissions to a school or deferred, then you can apply to other schools. So it's best to know those differences in that terminology and just make sure that you do not confuse those. So looking at all of this in terms of the big picture, right? Make sure that you research your schools, that you know your schools. Then make sure that you understand all the parts, the requirements for each school, what they want from you. All schools will not be the same. Know the deadlines, put those deadlines on a calendar so you can see them visually, you can refer to them. So when you get busy, you know that that school is due on this date, that school is due on that date. And then furthermore, you want to create sort of these milestones, right? For your recommendations, for your essays, your supplemental essays, your transcript. You want to be able to get all that done in a timely fashion. So have it on the calendar and then have those milestones on there so that you can follow them. And that way you're proactive, as we said in the beginning, and not reactive. So have a plan, stick to the plan, but then adjust your sails. As we know, we live in sort of unprecedented times lately, and we need to be able to have a plan of attack. That way we have more control, at least some sense of control, and then we can adjust accordingly to some things that may be changing. So this year, there have been some test changes, right? Some things will be pushed back. Some testing requirements may change. They're already changing for some schools. Just make sure that you are aware of those things. Make sure that you're diligent in looking at any changes, articles, key articles. If you're interested in specific schools, go to those websites, know what they're posting, what they're messaging out into the world, so that you're ready to confront or to work on this process in a much more engaged manner. And then also be aware that SAT and subject timelines are changing, right? There are some things that are happening in August, some things may change. So make sure that you're kind of kept abreast of those things. Go on the ATS website, make sure that you know what are the options, what are the times, what are the deadlines, and know, that there might be some options for August at this point, but a lot of people may be pursuing those options. So make sure that you have a plan of attack for that. Okay, so this is basically the content for this week. We know that it's a lot of information, it's sort of high level, but we trust that this will be helpful in terms of giving you the right mindset, providing you with some guidance and some insights. So next week, we're going to be talking about another important aspect of the work, and it's really working with your high school counselor. So how do you work with your high school counselor in the most, strategic fashion possible? So thank you very much. Have a very good evening. Have a good night. Thank you.